Just bopping and eating a banana. It's a good day. Yeah. I left my leaves in my tea way too long, and now it's super bitter, but I went to all the effort of getting out my tea strainer and my loose leaf and making a big cup, so now I have to drink it.
No, go get some honey, you know? Some sugar.
No, this is my punishment for wasting good tea leaves.
Gunnar, are you listening to like really good banana eating music while you're eating your banana?
New J. Cole album came out.
Oh, goddamn. I'm so sorry. I thought I was muted.
That's okay. We'll get by, Lawrence. All right, y'all. It's 9:01. Let's go ahead and get started. So today's class is being recorded. Check. We're going to be talking about SQL and ActiveRecord. So yesterday we talked about ActiveRecord associations, which really built up the concept of one-to-many. So one-to-many relationships at the database, foreign keys and primary keys. How do our models handle doing that? Handle those relationships. Today, we're going to be focusing more on some ActiveRecord and SQL calculations is how I would describe it. So this is probably more similar to what you did in the SQL intermission work, where you have a bunch of tables and you just write some queries to analyze those tables or retrieve specific data from those tables. So yesterday's class more about like building the structure of our relationships and how our records are built. Now today's focus is more on assuming we already have a bunch of data, how can we analyze it? How can we make some meaningful conclusions based on it? What I want to start off with is a breakout room conversation. So I want to move you all into some breakout rooms, and I just want you to talk about how did the SQL intermission work go for you? And I think as kind of like a guide, I would love everybody to get to like a, maybe think right now where you're at on the scale and try to come to a conclusion by the end of the breakout room. So the scale is red, green, or yellow. So like red, I didn't really feel too good about that SQL intermission work. Yellow, I felt okay, I could get through it. Wasn't that great. Green, I'm good to go. I could do a lot more of those exercises. So I want everybody to get into like one of those kind of feelings on our intermission work. I'll give you all about 5 minutes to do this. Yeah. So I'm going to make some breakout rooms. And while I do that, please let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I've got these breakout rooms set. Just one more time, discuss how the SQL intermission exercises went for you and try to get to I'm feeling red, yellow, or green about SQL.
How's the morning going, Brian?
Going well. Much less technical issues than yesterday. How is your morning going?
Oh, just wonderfully. I get to be
Aside-
here with my cohort.
There you go. All right, welcome back, everybody. So I'd love for everybody to click on the reactions button for your Zoom and go ahead and give me a corresponding colored emoji reaction to red, yellow, green. So I've got my green yes reaction. I've got a red no. You can use a red heart. I think that would work as well. We've also got a bunch of yellow emojis. Got like a thumbs up. Blue, I don't know where blue falls into this range. Is blue, you're sad? Awesome. So we've got a good mix of people here. I think that's kind of what I would expect. So let's go ahead and get in. Well, I'm happy to go ahead and jump right into this lesson. I do want to open it up. Was there anything that came up in that discussion that anybody would like to bring up to the whole group before we get into the lesson? Regina?
I think Susie had a really good thought. Yeah, it was more of like, okay, so you have your terminal and you go into your SQL, and from there you can write SQL that will maybe like sort your information. Is that piece of block of maybe, is it still considered code, stored somewhere, or does it kind of just live within your SQL and kind of disappear?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And today's class is to kind of like try and draw some more connections between what's the relationship between SQL and ActiveRecord. This kind of applies to like really anything that you do in the terminal. So like if you go to open up your SQL session, or if you're using Postgres, a PSQL session. Let me actually show rather than just talk about it. So if I like go here and I type PSQL and I do like select star from songs, this probably isn't connected to my songs database, so that's not a great example. But as soon as I exit out of it, that information that I've selected is now gone. So when we're saying we're making queries or we're making calculations, these are really like temporary values. If we want them to be more permanent, we would want to like display them to the user somehow. So that's where the like routing and adding in a controller and adding in a view to display this information would come in. For now, we're not really worrying about that too much. For now, we're just worrying about, can we get the information? Then we'll layer on, can we display it? So for example, in your project, when it says on the parent index, the record should be sorted by most recently created, there's kind of two things you need to figure out there. One, just how do I get the record sorted in that way? And two, okay, now that I know how to get that, how do I display it to the user? Does that help, Regina?
Yeah, so does that mean that like what you're typing in PSQL is kind of like IRB or a pry in a sense, so then you had to go in and write it in your code?
That's a really great comparison. Yes, it's just like pry, where we could open up this term console session. Let me actually do this. Railsdb console is a command that I'm going to use. I'll do this a couple times, so if you don't quite get that, that's okay. This will open up a PSQL session, but it will connect to my database. So now I should be able to do select star from songs. I'm writing SQL here. And yes, just like in Pry, this is me just kind of like playing around with it. But as soon as I exit out, I don't really, none of that is saved anywhere. So I would then have to like put that code into my Rails app somewhere.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. And now I'll layer on a little bit more complexity here with the commands we're doing today to make calculations. That is temporarily stored information, but there are SQL commands you could execute that would permanently alter your database, like insert. If I used an insert command, that would be saying add a new row to my database. So I'll just throw in that extra complexity there, but we won't get into any like insertion or deletion today. Jen.
First, I realized that I was the one with blue. That was an accident, so I wasn't ignoring you. But yes, I am sad. So Rails has ActiveRecord built in. And then with SQL, I know is like the more universal. So generally speaking, do other frameworks have like an equivalent of ActiveRecord built in? And if they do, I guess, would it be more beneficial to just use those as they come, or like in the real world, is just using SQL kind of as your go-to in newer situations? Is that like acceptable? Do you know?
Yeah, so so ActiveRecord is our ORM. It's our object relational mapper. So when you say like, is there other like ActiveRecord things in other languages? What I would, another way we could ask that question is, are there ORMs for different programming languages? So if we, web browser, one sec. If we Google like Python ORM, oh look, here's a whole list of things. Does it say? Here we go, SQL Alchemy, Peewee, the Django ORM. I think SQL Alchemy is the one that I've seen Mod 4 students use if they mess around with Python, or if they use Python in their capstone projects. So the short answer is yes, there are equivalents to ActiveRecord. Do you use SQL in the real world? Yes. Has anybody used SQL in a job as part of their job before? I know we had a couple students last mod, Jameson, Zach. Yeah, it's definitely a common thing. And as we'll talk about today, all of our SQL commands, or sorry, all of our ActiveRecord commands execute SQL under the hood. So no matter what, you can't get away from learning SQL, because at the end of the day, all of these ActiveRecord commands are producing SQL. So we have to know some level of SQL. Yeah, so I would say in practice, what it looks like is you learn both the ORM and you learn SQL. SQL is the more transferable skill because it's used across multiple ORMs and frameworks. Jen, did that answer your question?
Yes. So if I were to summarize, would it be fair to say SQL's like the universal language, and each framework has like a menu? Like if you use a menu at one restaurant, it's not going to mean anything at another restaurant? Or is that just,
yeah,
okay,
that's a good way to say it. Yeah,
okay.
I would say like learning cooking techniques is or like learning about food is like a transferable skill, but then you go to a specific restaurant and they have a specific menu of how to use those like general food concepts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else before we look at some code? Let's jump into it. Let's get into a little bit of SQL and ActiveRecord. Okay, so I've checked out this. So I'm on my setlist class version, which is what you'll find linked in our lesson plans. I would say don't worry too much about. Let me go ahead and do this. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily matter what version of setlist you're on, as long as you have an artist and a song model. So as long as you have an artist and a song model, you should be good to go. It's also helpful to have the seeds file. But for now, I just want to demonstrate these things, and I'll give you all plenty of time to practice at the end. So I wouldn't worry too much about following along. I would just say, watch me do now, and you'll get a chance to practice as well. So I'm actually going to close out my Atom here because we're going to mostly work in the console today. So I'm going to run Railsdb console. And unlike some of our other DB commands, there's no colon here. That's like a quick gotcha. So it's just DB console. And this will open up this PSQL session that's connected to my database. So as I've already done, I can say select star from songs. And now I am executing SQL. I see here that when I do select star from songs, it just gives me no rows. It just gives me nothing. So that's telling me that my database is empty. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to exit out of this PSQL session and run a Railsdb seed. And this is what I would expect. So I'm actually going to open up Atom again here. And it says you have 3 pending migrations. So let's try and run these Railsdb migrate. And I'm going to get errors for duplicate table relation songs already exist. So what's going on is when I try to run this create songs migration, my database already has a songs table. The reason is because I've been working off of multiple copies of setlist. So there's the tutorial where we've been making the videos for you all. There's this version, which is our class version. So because I've kind of got like multiple databases that are, so my apps are named the same, they're all named setlist. And then maybe while I'm here, we could do this. If I go into config database.yaml, this will show me the name of my databases, which are setlist development. So Rails just takes the name of your app and appends _ development. And if I go down here, _test to create your database names. So because both my apps are called setlist, they're using the same database. So that's where this problem's coming from. The way that I'm going to fix this is I'm just going to drop it. So Railsdb Drop, my caveat here is that this is blowing away the database completely. It's destroying it. So I would never want to do this on a database that has actual important data in it. So if I'm working at Facebook, I would not want to drop our Facebook production database. Now, of course, data in the real world databases are backed up so that you can't just make a mistake and lose all of your data. But I just want to make sure that you all know that Railsdb Drop, something that's okay to do when we're working locally and we are working with data that's where this is more educational purposes. It's not very important. When you get on your job, you want to be much more careful about doing this. Okay, so now that I've dropped the database, I'll go ahead and create it. And now I should be able to migrate it. And because I'm in this version of setlist, it should use these migrations under DB migrate. Cool. So now rather than any like duplicate table errors, I just get the output from these migrations. It says migrated. It looks like this was successful. The next thing that I'm going to do to get some data into my database is run the seeds task. So this was part of the of some of our videos, and it's also part of the ActiveRecord Association's lesson plan. So the seeds file is very helpful for just inserting data into your database really quickly, which is exactly what we want to do. So I'll run Railsdb seed, and Rails is going to look through this file and essentially just run these commands one by one. So you can think of the seeds file as a script that just executes these statements one by one. So I ran Railsdb seed. I didn't get any error output, so I think we should be good to go. Let's try Railsdb console again. And now let's do a select star from songs. And now I have a lot more songs coming back. Any questions about what I've covered so far? Natia?
When you seed your database, are you doing that in your test or your dev environment?
This is development.
Okay, so if you want to have test cases, they have to live in your test cases, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep. You don't want to create this same concept of a seeds file for your tests. And the reason is, if you imagine like there's just one file that creates all of your test setup, all of your tests that you have with this branch doesn't actually have any testing on it. But as we start to get dozens and dozens of maybe even hundreds of test files, they're going to need different setup. So we prefer not to have one global test setup. Another important note here is that the only time we touch our test database is when we are running our tests. So if because I'm not running any tests here, we won't be messing around with the test database. Lawrence?
Sorry, do you have any recommendations for the kind of backing up of databases, or is that just something we should talk about later?
That's something we're not really going to get to talk about. I mentioned this like in to some students at different points, but I'll just say it here. As backend developers, we manipulate the data and we retrieve the data from the database, but we aren't as concerned with managing the database structure itself. So that would be more the job of a database administrator. If we were a database administration program, we would probably dive into that, of like backing up databases and all of that. But that's not something we're going to get into as backend developers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Regina?
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, and it includes a question afterwards. So if you were to like drop a database, it would delete everything in your seed file, correct?
Not the file. So the file is part of our Rails app here. So all of these files that we have, under every folder, they would not be affected by the database. So the seed file would stay the same. It's just that the data that the seed file created in the database would be wiped away.
The data within the, okay, I'm not quite sure what that means.
Let me try this. Let me open up
Okay.
Postico here. So I've got Postico, I'll connect, and I'll go to set list development. So if I click on songs here, I see all of these songs that were seeded from my seeds file. So when I ran that command, Railsdb seed, it yeah, there we go. So when I ran Railsdb seed, it went through this file and it said, okay, song.destroy all, artist.destroy all. Those are my first two commands. Those commands just say, destroy all the current songs and artists. Then it went through and made these artists, and then it made all of these songs for those artists. So I can see Raspberry Beret is my first song over here. Purple Rain is my second song. Legend Has It is my third song. So this seeds file is creating the data in the database. If I exit out of PSQL over here and I do the same thing, let's actually back up over here. If I do Railsdb Drop, this actually might not work. Yeah, because it says it's being accessed by other users. So I actually can't have Postico open at the same time. So what I'll do is I will, I'll just close out Postico.
You can also see it in the Postgres, the little elephant at the top. I think it'll show it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would also show our databases as well. Whoa, what did I just do? I just exported localhost. That's not what I want to do. Okay, so now I'll run Railsdb drop that I'm not connected to Postgres. So it'll say drop those two databases. Now when I connect and I click on localhost here, I don't even have setlist development or test anymore. Both of those databases and everything inside of them, including all the songs data, that was just destroyed. But notice that my file here is still completely intact. So that's the advantage of using this seeds file, is that if for whatever reason you need to reseed at a later point in time, like right now, you can reuse this file. This file is just instructions. It's just a set of instructions. So I can use it by saying Railsdb create. And I'm surprised that that one didn't say like being accessed by other users. But anyway, let's click on this again. And now I'll click refresh. And now I can see my 2 databases are created.
Okay, very cool. Okay, that makes perfect sense. The second part to that was when you create a database, what is happening? Maybe, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is some part of your computer that we don't want to like manually touch, but there is some part of your computer that is set aside for like Postgres, and that is storing data. And we don't really need to worry about like how it is actually implemented. All that's important is that we know that there's like some, so you know, you have your computer has like an amount of space that it can store things in. Your computer has like you know, 256 gigabytes or something like that. Some of that is set aside for Postgres, and then Postgres then divides that up even more. So if I look at localhost, I have all of these databases. Postgres then divides that up into individual databases. And then within those individual databases, it stores the tables and everything like that. So I guess the short answer is it is storing data on your computer.
So once you like go maybe live with something and maybe get your code stored globally, not locally, would you then drop the database to create room on your system?
So once we what you're referring to is deploying our applications. Once we deploy our apps to make them accessible on the internet, now the database no longer lives on our computer. It now lives on some remote server somewhere that's serving our application and storing the database. Yeah. So these are all really important important questions. Thank you, Regina. One implication while you're working with your partners is that each you and your partner have your own copy of the database on your physical computer. So you can't actually share the database between each other. What you share is the instructions or the code in your Rails app that manipulates the data, but you don't share the actual database. You have separate copies of the database on your computers.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Just to kind of complete this here, if I go into setlist development, I'll see there's no tables in here yet. So if I back out and do Railsdb migrate, this should help show you the connections between all these commands. So drop deleted these databases, create created them, migrate. If I do a refresh here, migrate added in the tables and the columns. See how I have this songs tables and columns? So that changed my schema, but it didn't actually add any data. If I want to add data, I'll back out again and do Railsdb seed. So db seed is what should actually seed some data into this table. So I'll say that one more time. Created the database, migrate created the tables and the columns in the database, and then seed created the rows inside those tables. Natia?
How do you drop your test database if you want to?
All of your Railsdb, not all of them. So Railsdb drop, create, and migrate should do both databases. So if I do drop here, we should see, is it still, yeah, it's still being accessed. Let's try that one more time. If I do that here, we should see drop setlist development and drop setlist test.
And is there a way to say like, I just want to drop one?
Yes, for any Rails command, if you want to specify a specific environment, so let's do that again. So I'll say Railsdb create, we'll see created setlist development, created setlist test. I can do Railsdb drop, and the way I specify an environment is Rails env equals test, for example. And so then that would drop just that one. Okay, I see we have a couple more hands here. Let's go ahead and take a palm. We'll come back at 9:40 and then I'll get to your questions.
Brian, do you want to be recording during breaks?
Why is it recording or not recording right now?
Yeah, it was recording during the break.
Yeah, I don't need to be recording during the breaks, but if I pause the recording, I will forget to start it.
Okay, just checking.
I don't want to be recording during breaks, but not as badly as I just want the recording to happen, if that answers it.
That answers it perfectly. Do the same things.
All right. So I know we had a couple hands go up. I'm going to push forward a little bit in this lesson plan, and please just hold on to your questions for a little while longer. Okay. So so far I've opened up a Railsdb console. I dropped this test database right here with my last command, but I don't really care too much about that. I'll go ahead and I'll just run Railsdb create. And we'll see one of them says development already exists, but then test was created. So now we've created both of them. Let's also do a migrate here. And I'll do a seed. So those commands of create, migrate, and seed, those are my normal Rails database setup commands. So I'll almost always run those 3 commands whenever I start a Rails app or I'm opening up a Rails app. Okay, so now I'm going to open up my DB console again. And I'm going to close out my other windows here. I don't think I will need them. And I'm going to open up a new terminal here. And what I want to do is I want to do a little side-by-side comparison of both. So let me go into turn to module. There we go. So down below here, I've opened up a PSQL session. This is connecting directly to my database. In the top here, I'm going to open up a Rails console. So this is connecting to my Rails development environment. So down here in the PSQL session, I'll be able to interact with SQL. In the Rails console session, I interact with my models. Remember, the models are our connection to the database. So down below here, I will do a select star from songs. So this is our first SQL command we'll talk about here. So select is telling me what columns I want to get, and a star refers to everything. So this is a very common character used in computer science. Sometimes this is referred to as a wildcard as well in different contexts. So it matches anything. From is indicating what table we are looking at, and the table is the songs table. So altogether, this says select all of the columns from the songs table. And so we see all of those columns coming through like that. And we get all of the rows from that table. So we get 12 rows here. Let's take a look at the corresponding active record here. So using my song model as my connection to my song table, the corresponding active record method here is .all. So I can do song.all. And another thing I could do, I think I showed you all the underscore shortcut, which just gives me the last thing in a terminal session, or sorry, in an IRB session. So if I do underscore, that will give me everything I just got. I can do a command called pp for pretty print and combine that with my underscore, and it'll just print out my records in a more formatted way. So rather than this giant dump of information, it'll print them out as each on their own line. So pretty print or pp is a very helpful command when you're in a terminal. And what we can see is we can see all of our song rows from the database represented as Ruby objects. So if I highlight each of these, on the bottom, we see the raw representation in the database. This is stored as raw information. This song Raspberry Beret is stored as this raw data. On the Rails side of things, in the Rails console, it is represented as a song object. Okay. Another thing we can see from in this Rails console, which is very important, is that whenever we run these commands, let me do it again, song.all. What we'll see is we'll see the SQL that is running under the hood to get that data. So I see select songs.star from songs limit, and then I get this like parameter of 11 for my limit here. So the SQL doesn't look exactly the same. But the point is here that our active record commands execute SQL under the hood. This is a very, very important concept. So our SQL commands, our active record commands execute SQL under the hood. Another thing that I could do in the Rails console up here is I could use a command called .to_SQL. And that will actually show me the SQL that would be produced from this method. So here we can see our select songs.star from songs. And I also see that some of these characters are escaped, like these quote characters here. So I can puts that, and I'll do puts underscore to print out that last string that I see. And that'll just print it out in a slightly more readable format. And this format I could actually take and drop right into my SQL session here. Add a semicolon, and that will do the same thing. Just a couple more notes on the SQL syntax. So if I do that version that my Rails console gave me, notice that this one is slightly different. So this one actually wraps each table name in quotes. So I can see quote songs right here, and I can see quote songs right here. So when we're referencing table names, we can also add quotes to them. And then this is saying rather than star, this is dot star. So this syntax is saying from this table, all of the columns on that table. So just regular star would be all the columns that are available. Songs.star is saying all the columns that are available on the songs table. So that's just a little note on our SQL syntax there. Another thing to note about this active record method that I've called here, song.all, this is very streamlined. It's very simple. And notice that by default, song.all will do a songs.star. So by default, the way your active record methods work by default is they just select all of the columns from whatever table you're working with. So that's some default behavior. Later on, we'll want to override that a little bit more often, but just know that that's the default behavior of your models. It will grab all of the columns. All right, so I've been talking for a little while. What questions do you all have? Okay. Well, if there's no questions right now, I can keep going forward. So let's do our next example, which is going to be selecting a specific column. So we can use star in SQL to say select all of the columns, but we don't always want to get back all of the columns. For instance, what if we just want to get back the titles? We can do that with a couple ways. I could say select title from songs. And that will return to me a table, but this new table only has one column, which is this title column that I selected. I can also separate these with commas. So I could say like title, length, and play count to get all three of those back. That's another way that I could do that. And as I mentioned before, you can be more explicit with your SQL, and we will have to do this later on in the mod. But rather than just title, I could say I specifically want this title from the songs table like this with songs.title. So I could say select songs.title from songs. And that will also give me that title column. So a couple important SQL syntaxes there. The corresponding active record would be song.select. And then I can pass it here what columns I want to select. So I could pass title as a symbol. And because our active record is an ORM, an object relational mapper, it's going to take that data and represent it as objects. So if I do a pretty print for what that produced, I'm getting these objects back, but notice that their IDs are nil. So these IDs are nil because we did not select that column. We only selected the title. So that's why we're only seeing the title here for all of these objects. And then I could also pass multiple columns here, just like I did in SQL. And so now if I pretty print that, I'll see each song object has the title and the play count, but the IDs are still nil. Jen?
I apologize if you said this already. Is there a best practice as far as the caps on like select, where it like where some of the words are in capitals?
I think a lot of times what you'll see is that the commands are capitalized, like select star from songs. So the columns and the tables are not capitalized, but then the keywords like selected from are capitalized. I don't know if I would say one of them is a best practice. I would say it's more of a preference. Yeah.
Sorry, I meant like if I were not to put select and from in capitals, I think it still works the same, but is there any negative?
Like this?
Yeah. I mean, does it matter, or would you all ding us, or employers would frown upon you?
I don't think so. And I would say this probably comes down to a company specific style guide. So
Okay.
however your company does things. Functionally, there's no difference. So in SQL, we can interchange caps most of the times, like select star from songs. And I also, I think I could also, yeah, I could also capitalize the table name, but I usually don't see that in practice. I usually see the table name lowercase.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Alex?
So I tried to do those exact commands in uppercase and lowercase, and it kept saying that I had a syntax error. Do you know what like simple dumb thing I might be doing by accident?
It might be the semicolon at the end. You have to have a semicolon at the end when you're in this PSQL session.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's there too.
So one thing you want to watch out for is if you are, if you forget the semicolon, you see how my prompt changed slightly. Now it's from equals and it's a dash. So what this is like I'm still writing the same line. So even if I write it correctly now, like select star from songs,
that's got to be it. Yep.
It's reading all of this as one command because I didn't end it with the semicolon.
That is super helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Another thing that I can do up here is I can say rather than symbols, I can also use strings. So I could say select title, and same thing with play count. So whenever you're referencing these column names, usually you can do a symbol or a string, but it has to be one of those two. Molly?
Do you get a performance benefit from using symbols there? Is there any like convention for like avoiding strings? Like I know you can write a lot of SQL into string arguments, but like, is it like conventional to try and use active record syntax when you can, or does it matter at all?
So just in terms of Ruby, anytime you create a symbol, it will be more performant than a string. Now, how big that performance benefit is, very, very minimal. I would say I usually prefer a symbol if I can use a symbol.
Okay.
All right. So some other important things for us to note here. So if I do my select star, oh, we can even see that point that Alex brought up earlier. So now when I try to like look at the last command, it saw both of them as the same commands because I didn't end the first one with the semicolon. So anyway, I'll do my select title from songs here. Notice that this command here returns a new table. So this is not a table that is, as we discussed at the beginning, this is not a permanently stored table. This is not something that is now part of the database. This is a temporary table that is stored, technically it would be stored in memory. So it is temporary. And so the way it works is that when SQL executes these commands, it returns new tables. Then ActiveRecord, as our ORM or our translator, takes that table and translates it into Ruby objects. The Ruby object that we get back from this song.selectTitle is this ActiveRecord relation object. So just like our associations collection proxy object that we talked about yesterday, we can think of this as just like an array. So let me save this to a variable. Let me say songs equals underscore. So this is another way you can use the underscore. So now songs is holding on to this active record relation object. Again, it's just like an array. So I could say songs bracket 0. I could say songs bracket 1. I could say songs dot, what else can I do with an array? Could I do dot reverse? I can do dot reverse. I could each over it. So I could do each do song puts maybe song dot title, something like that. So I could each over it, not songs dot title, song dot title. And we can see that's printing out all of those. So the this active record relation object that we get from running these commands behaves just like an array. Lee.
I had my hand up for a hot second. So I think I remember reading about this, that when you're typing in terminal, it doesn't necessarily matter if the select and the from is capitalized versus lowercase. Am I remembering that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Is it just convention that it's supposed to be uppercase?
I would say conventionally the commands are uppercased, but in practice, I don't bother uppercasing because it's just like one more key that I have to hit on my keyboard while I'm typing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So this this select method is very useful for only getting back a specific column. And you do want to be using, you do want to make sure, this is just in general for active record, you want to try and make active record do as little work as possible because as our database grows, so as we start to add in millions of records, our queries are going to take a lot longer to run. So if we're asking active record to do 2 things rather than 1 thing, it might take twice as long. So we always want to select a specific column if it is applicable. And another helpful command for doing something very similar, if you just wanted to get back that raw data. So notice how this still returns to me this active record relation. These are all song objects. They have these like nil IDs. If we don't really need any of that extra information, we just need an array of the titles. We can use another command called pluck. So I could say song.pluck title And rather than this active record relation, it gives me a regular array with just the titles in it. Notice that we lose all the other information like the ID and such, but that might be okay depending on your use case. All right, let's cover some where, and then we will, then I'll kick off the practice exercises. So what we've talked about so far with the select statement is how we tell ActiveRecord, or how we tell SQL to get a specific column. Now let's talk about specific rows. So the rows are the pieces of data, the actual entries of data. And a lot of times we don't want to just look at all of those data, all of those pieces of data. We want to look only at certain pieces of data that meet some sort of criteria. So for example, I could say select star from songs, but I don't want to just look at all the songs. I only want songs where the title is, let's go with Raspberry Beret. And so now rather than returning all of my rows, I just get this one row with this matching data. So where is a very, very important command, both in SQL and ActiveRecord. So in ActiveRecord, what this will look like is my song model dot where, and then I'm going to use a keyword argument to say the title should be Raspberry Beret. And again, notice that under the hood, there is still SQL being executed. So select songs.star from songs where, that looks very similar to what we wrote in our SQL session down here. So this is how you would look for an exact match. I can say title equals, but a lot of times we don't just want an exact match. We want some sort of comparison, like where the play count is rather than equals. Let me just start over here. So select star from songs where the play count is greater than 4. And that'll give me a lot of, that'll give me all of my rows back because they all have the play count greater. Let me say greater than 15,000. And so now we can see we're only getting back 9 rows. It filtered out those 3 rows that had the play count less than 1,500. So the active record for this is a little bit different. So because we're not looking for an exact match, we can't use this keyword argument syntax. So what we have to do instead is we have to pass a string. So this is one of the use cases where symbols won't work. We are going to have to use a string. So here I can say play underscore count is greater than 15,000. And if you look at my SQL output, you can see that play count greater than 15,000 is wrapped in parentheses. And that is just kind of inserted exactly as I wrote it into my SQL statement. So whenever you're using these strings in ActiveRecord, what you're doing is you're writing a SQL fragment. So you're writing a tiny piece of SQL that's going to be put into your actual SQL statement. So ActiveRecord said song.where. Okay, he's trying to do a where. It took this SQL fragment and it just put this right next to my where statement. So if I had made a typo in there, if I had said like play underscore counts, I don't know, let's just say blah, blah, blah. We can see again, it's trying to insert that exactly as is into the SQL statement, but it is obviously not working because blah, blah, blah is not appropriate SQL syntax. So I'll say that one more time. Anytime you're using a string argument in ActiveRecord, you're writing a SQL fragment that is going to be inserted as you wrote it directly into your SQL statement. All right. So that's everything that I wanted to cover for the first half of this class. I do want to give you all a chance to work on some of the practice exercises. So I'll go ahead and just talk about this very briefly, and then I can take some more questions. Let me take a look at this. So for some reason, this lesson wasn't linked in the calendar, but I did link it. So if you didn't see that earlier, it should be there. You might need to refresh your calendar if you're looking at it. So this is SQL and ActiveRecord. All the way at the bottom, we're going to have these practice exercises. And I want you to go ahead and start working on these. And I do want to move you into breakout rooms, but I'll take your questions first. Another note about these practice exercises is that we've covered enough information for you all to do the first 4. And the last 5, or sorry, the last 4 will, you'll need some other methods that are the second half of this lesson plan. So we covered up through selecting specific rows, and you will need these commands for ordering, limiting, and distinct in order to complete those exercises. But we'll go over that later. I want to give you all a chance to practice first. All right, so question time. Regina, did you have a question?
I was just gonna ask, when you use like song.where, are the other, I guess, methods that you use within SQL usable within, I guess, within Ruby? Like, can you do like song.sort by, is that the right word?
Yes.
Yeah.
So because
they're just like built-in methods. Okay.
Yeah, so because this active record relation object acts like an array, I can use my array methods. Like I could say sort by, and then I think the easiest way would just be able to pass like sort by play count. Yeah. So I could do that. Yep. Or I could just call dot sort, and that would sort it somehow. I didn't tell it how to sort, so it just sorted it. I don't know exactly how it did it. Maybe it did it by ID. But yeah, you can call your other Ruby methods.
So even like, sorry. So even like song.sort instead of the dot where, does that work also?
That would not work, because then we would be calling dot sort directly on our song class, and it doesn't know how to sort that class.
So it only directly knows where right off of sort, or did we build a method where? Or is that built in?
Built into ActiveRecord.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Natia?
Can you write inside of your Rails app SQL without ActiveRecord?
Yeah, and I would say we kind of started doing that with this. So this is me writing a little bit of SQL. This is our SQL fragment. If you just wanted to write SQL, and I think this is, yeah, this will be part of the solo project, but you can use find by SQL, and then I can just write my SQL here. So I can say select star from songs. So if you just want to execute SQL, this is the method you would use. Lawrence?
Apologies. Is there a particular branch that has this larger seed in it?
Yeah, so this is off of the, is it linked in this lesson plan? Let me go ahead and just, I'll just go ahead and find it right now. And it's not setlist tutorial, it's just setlist.
Oh.
And this would be the AR associations branch. Yeah. So I'll just drop this in the chat. Lee.
I figured out my answer to my question. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So I would love to, I'm going to move you all into some breakout rooms next. And I want you to start working on these exercises. So my idea here is that you will, you'll work through these a little bit, and you will probably hit a point where you may or may not be ready to tackle them. So if you want to go look at the lesson plan to see how we can order things and how we can limit things. If you don't get through all of the exercises, that's fine. I want to circle back at the end and kind of cover the second half of this lesson. Cool. Does anyone have any questions before I let you go? Breakout rooms, work on these practice exercises as a group. All right. And if you need to take a POM, feel free to take a POM sometime during this. I'm going to put the timer on for 20 minutes and we'll see where we're at after 20.
Brian.
Hey, just checking in. You all doing all right? Do you need any help with anything?
I haven't actually started yet just because I needed to clone down the Turing example of set list. So I'm just kind of like finagling all of that.
Yeah. Do you need any help getting set up on that?
I think I feel good about it so far, but thank you.
I just pulled it down. Do we just do a git checkout to switch to the AR associations branch?
Yeah, you should, but if you have local changes, you might need to stash them.
Okay, thanks.
Did that work, Kevin?
Yeah, I just cloned it down, so I didn't have any local changes, so I was able to just git checkout over.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll leave you all to it then.
Thanks.
Hey, y'all, just checking in, seeing if there's anything I can help with, or if y'all are doing okay.
I am doing good.
Have you been able to complete a couple of these exercises?
Yeah, just a few, and yeah, we're working on it together.
Cool. All right. Well, if you all don't have any questions, I'll leave you to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Welcome.
Titles.
I think it's going to be title because it's the column name that we're looking for.
Okay. Select title from songs where the play count is greater than 0.
Well, maybe, no, you shouldn't have to clone the branch too.
Well, now I've recloned. So hopefully, I love by the time that our time is up, I'll have like cloned the database.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, is there anything I can help y'all with?
Yes.
Having setup issues.
Oh, real quickly, if I have associations practice, do I need to change it to AR associations?
So that branch was part of a different repo. They're two different repos, but you should be good to work off of associations practice. It's just it might not have the seed data. No, it should have the seed data in it actually. So you should be good to check out that branch.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Is there a way to automatically make it put the semicolon at the end? Because I'm probably wasting about 2 seconds per command.
Forgetting to put the semicolon.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, that's just part of it.
All right.
Y'all should just be thankful that we're not working in Java, where your app code has to have semicolons as well.
Where the two get the titles of the two songs with a play count greater than 0. So I've got a lot more songs than 2 with a play count greater than 0 here. Oh, sorry. Nadia, go ahead.
No, sorry. I can't seem to get my thing seated.
Yeah. What does it say? Run Railsdb migrate to update your database?
Error as well.
Yeah, so I think this is what I was running into at the beginning of the class, where you probably have multiple copies of your database. Just drop and recreate it. That's what I would recommend.
Thanks. I will do that now.
Yeah.
I'll eat Lawrence.
Yeah, so Lawrence, for the practice exercise, the data might not make sense. Like play count greater than 0. I would just update that to like try and do play count greater than 100,000 or something like that. It really just depends on what data you have seeded in your database. If you're on the AR associations branch and you seed it, I think what I did was 15,000.
Okay. And it doesn't matter. It's the same command for 0 or not.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not super important. Anything else I can help you with? I'm gonna go check in some other groups.
I think we might be good. Oh yeah, I think we might be good.
Cool. Yeah, just use that ask for help button if you need anything else. Hey group, just wanted to check in and see if you all had any questions so far, or if there's anything I could help with.
What was it that you said was different about the last two?
The last two exercises, practice exercises.
Yeah, was it 7 and 8?
It's the last four, and what's different about them is that I haven't talked about the commands that you'll need to complete them.
Oh, got it. Okay, sounds good.
So if you get to 4 and you're like, I have no idea how to do this, look in the lesson plan. There'll be some other information.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Have you all been able to do a couple of them so far? Awesome. Okay, well, I'll leave you to it.
But like, say you want just like one specific max buy. I mean, you could just do like whatever, like without any other information. You're just like, what's the greatest?
Well, I actually found
Length.
that was easier with a combo of order and limit 1. You order it, you limit to 1, and that's your max.
Ooh, I like that too.
You want
Okay,
to
when
order
did-
play count?
I wanted to check in
Yes.
with y'all real quick. It seems like y'all are doing okay, but do you all have any questions or anything I can help with?
Not off the top of my head, Jameson and or Noah.
We're cruising.
Yeah, I was gonna
Cruising.
say,
Yeah,
cruising.
cool. All right, I'll leave you to it.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey team, I wanted to check in and see if you all had any questions so far, or if there's anything that I could help with.
I'm pretty good so far.
Me too.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, I'll leave you to it then.
Lower, and then in parentheses you can put title, and then you can put in close parentheses, and you can put ascending or descending, and then it should get it to order it alphabetically correctly. It'll convert everything to, I guess, lowercase in this case.
You said lower, just
Yeah.
lower.
Yeah. So like order by lower parentheses, whatever your argument is, so like title in this case, and then like ascending, and then it'll when it prints that out, it should give you all alphabet.
Every time, Richard, it's like you're staring right into my soul. Just move your camera up.
No, don't let anybody dim your shine, Richard. You put the camera wherever you want.
Like
there's like a limited range. So I mean, if I stare at the camera, this is what it looks like. I'm usually looking down.
It's just like I've woken
I don't
up
know how
on-
your soul is on my keyboard. So
All right, let's get back into class here. So I'm going to finish up with some of the stuff that I said I wasn't going to give you to complete the practice exercises. So this is kind of like the part 2 of class here. So let's talk about ordering rows. So we've talked about getting specific columns. We've talked about getting specific rows. Now we're talking about, once we get those rows, how do we format them? So the first way is to order them. So if I do a select star from songs, I can use a command order by to tell SQL how I want this output formatted. So maybe if I just do select star from songs, we'll see Raspberry Beret at the top. We'll see I can change at the bottom. If we then add in an order by title, this should sort this output alphabetically by the title. So now we'll see 26 as the first, 26 as the first song here. And the order, the alphabetical order has caps first. So that's why the B's are at the end, because they're lowercase. So A, I, L, P, all the way to V. And then it starts over again with lowercase letters down here. If I want to reverse the order of sorting, so I can add in sort by title, and I can add in DESC, which stands for descending. So descending meaning greatest to least. So now that will reverse our output here. The opposite of descending is ascending. So I can say ASC here, and that will sort it how we saw before. But ASC is always optional. By default, your sort will be ascending. So you don't need to put ASC, but you can optionally. So that without ASC, with ASC, it'll do the same thing. The active record method for this is .order. So in active record, I could say song.order, and then I could say title, and that will give me my active record relation array with all my songs, but now will be ordered. Let's do the pretty print command here. And so we should see at the top, we get 26, and then ain't no bread in the bread box. And then all the way at the bottom, we'll get vagabond, and then bad guy and bury a friend, just like we see down here. If I then wanted to do the same thing where I want to sort the title descending, I can change this from a symbol to a keyword argument of title and then pass it a symbol of DESC. So that would be the syntax for a descending sort. And just to build off of what we did before, I could also write this as a SQL fragment. So I could say order title descending inside a string here. And we'll see that SQL fragment be inserted just as I wrote it inside my SQL statement right here. And just to demonstrate that, if I then like capitalize one of these, like I capitalize the D here, we can see now the D is capitalized up here. I could maybe capitalize the D and the S. And so we can see that change up here. So the point of this, of me showing you this, is to emphasize what I said before. Strings as arguments are SQL fragments that are inserted exactly as is into your SQL statements. We can also limit how many rows we get back. So for instance, if we only need one row back, we could say select star from songs, and we could say limit 1 here. If we just wanted to get back 1 row, or I could change this to 2 and get back 2 rows. This is very helpful for finding the maximum or the minimum of something. So for instance, if I want the song with the greatest play count, I can order it by play count descending, and I can limit it to 1. And it's going to be order by. And so that would give me my song with my greatest play count. So anytime you want to get the max or min of something, this is a very easy way to do that. So you order and limit it to 1. The active record syntax, very, very similar here. It's going to be .limit, and then I pass it an argument of how many rows I want back. So I could say .limit 1 here, and that would just give me back my first song, or I could say limit 2 to give me back 2 songs. And so I could combine that with my order command. I could say .order, and I could say play count descending, and then chain on a .limit of 1 here. And so this would give me back my same legend has it, as we saw down here in SQL. It gives me back this song with the greatest play count in active record. The final command I'm going to talk about is distinct. So distinct will make sure that you're not getting back duplicates. So for instance, let's create another song with the same title as of legend has it. So let's say song.create title legend has it. And we'll just give it a play count, and we'll give it a length. Oh, and I'm going to give validation failed, artist must exist. So we need to give this an artist. Let's go ahead. I see this one has artist ID of 2. So I'm not going to use my active record relation or my active record association here. I'm just going to manually edit that foreign key to say it should be 2. So I can use a command that I saw before, .pluck, to give me back all the titles. And I should see that legend has it is in here twice. So there's once and there's another one. Okay, so now that we've got some duplicate data, now we can talk about getting back distinct records. So if I do from SQL, if I do songs, select star from songs, I'll see legend has it here and here. But what if I wanted to get back unique titles? Well, rather than star, I could say .title, select title from songs. And now I just get the titles back, and I'm getting back my 13 rows. Now what we can do is we can say select distinct title from songs. And that will only give me 12 rows. So legend has it is now only in here once. The active record command would be something similar. So we can do song.select title. And if I do a .count on that, that will tell me there's 13 rows. So now if I do a .distinct on it, this is the active record distinct. And that would do a .count on that. And now I'll see I'm only getting back my 12 rows. One caveat with distinct is that it cannot do a distinct, you cannot treat records as distinct if there's any piece of data that's different between the two. So for example, I did select title from songs. If I do a select star from songs, we'll see that I have these duplicate titles of legend has it, but notice that the other pieces of data are not the same. So like their IDs are not the same, their lengths and play counts and timestamps and all that is not the same. So if I try to do a select distinct star from songs here, I'll still get back my 13 rows. So this legend has it and this legend has it are treated as distinct rows. If we only get back the title, they appear to be exactly the same because the titles are exactly the same. So that's the caveat with distinct. If the records are not the same, for instance, they have different IDs, you can't treat them as distinct. So those are all the active record commands that we want you to know for right now. I want to go through this putting it all together part of the lesson plan. So what this is saying is, it says, let's say we want to get the titles of the 2 songs with the longest length that have a play count of at least 60,000 plays. So I'm going to copy that text and let me do this. So I'll just put that right up here as my as what I'm trying to accomplish. Get the titles of the 2 songs with the longest length that have at least 60,000 plays. So I could write that in SQL. I could say select title, because we only want the titles from songs. So it says get the titles of the 2 songs. So if we want only 2, we should limit it to 2. We want the longest length, so let's order by length descending. And these records need to have at least 60,000 plays, so we'll say where play count is greater than 60,000. And I think I'm going to need to actually change my syntax here. So I believe I actually need to do the where first. So let me start over. From songs where play count greater than 60,000. Let's just see if that works. Okay, so that works. Limit to, can we throw that in there? Looks like that works. And then order by length descending. And my order by syntax is not quite working here. There we go. Okay, so then I think limit needs to go at the end. There it is. Okay, so select title from songs where play count greater than 60,000, order by length descending, limit to. One thing that you noticed there as I was doing this is that I was like kind of finagling with the SQL syntax. I was like, oh, I think where goes here. And then I had to like kind of move things around. So SQL is very finicky when it comes to syntax. The syntax, there's like a specific order. So select needs to come first, then from, and then a where. And it didn't work if I changed the order. So the SQL syntax is very finicky. The active record syntax, note what you'll see is that I can actually write this in a different order. So translating to active record, I'll say, I'll do my select title here. I'll do a dot where play count is greater than 60,000. I'll do a dot order by length descending. And I'll do a dot limit of 2. And that will return to me the same pieces of data. Talk to me and legend has it. Talk to me and legend has it. The really nice thing about active record is that the order of these methods doesn't really matter. So for instance, I could take the dot limit and put it all the way here at the beginning. So I could put limit 2 right here. And that will work. I could take the dot order and do the same thing and put that all the way at the beginning as well. Length descending. So these active record methods, you can change the order of your active record methods. This is different than what you learned in Mod 1. So I want to make sure that we are very explicit about that. The way Ruby normally works is that when we run methods with chained commands with chained dots, they execute left to right and they execute in order. So for instance, if I do a string of Brian, and then I do dot upcase, and then I do I don't know, let's do bracket 0 here. Actually, let's just do dot first. Will that work? Yeah. So in normal Ruby, methods run left to right. So in normal Ruby, this is take this string, then we'll upcase it, and that will return to me the upcase string of Brian. So just to demonstrate that, put that right here. Then dot first runs on top of this capital string of Brian, which would give me capital B. But if I change the order, if I say dot first here and then dot upcase, or if I said dot first here, this would give me the B, then dot upcase would run on top of that method or on top of that return value. So in Ruby, these methods run left to right, where the next method runs on the previous method's return value. That is not the behavior of ActiveRecord. ActiveRecord, like this, ActiveRecord takes all of your commands that you execute, and rather than executing them one by one, it packages them up together into a single SQL statement. And we can see that right below. We can see all of my ActiveRecord methods being put into one big SQL statement. So that's a nuance of ActiveRecord that might feel kind of odd after having worked in Ruby for a whole mod. The caveat that I'll give you is that your ActiveRecord methods, you can change the order of them, but you can't do that with methods that are calculations like pluck or .average or .count. You cannot change those orders. Those commands have to go at the end. And that'll come up, we'll talk about that more when we get to grouping and aggregating. All right, so that's all the content that I have for you today. Yeah, what questions do y'all have? One of your questions can be, how would we do this practice exercise? Or I got stuck on this practice exercise. Can we see an example of that? Jen?
Earlier you had song.order and then symbol for title versus song.order title :symbol descending, or if I'm using that correctly. I am just having a difficult time sometimes knowing where to place the colon. Like I know in the first example, I understand why, but in the second one, why would the colon be after title instead of prior to it?
Yes, so when you are, when we're doing, let me actually just type this one out. There we go. So those are two versions. Where did my, sorry, I don't know where the first one went. Title like this. There we go. So those are our two versions. So if you are just passing the column name, then it should be a symbol. And a symbol is where the colon goes at the beginning of the word. So if you are just passing a single value like title, the colon goes at the beginning. If you are associating, or if you're making a key value pair, the terminology that I use is keyword arguments, like this, where we're saying the title is descending, then your colon is going to need to go on the right side. So the way I would look at this is a title keyword with a value of a symbol, because the colon is at the front, descending. So the colon's at the front, it's ascending. Another way you can think of it is if the colon's on the right, it's kind of like pointing to something else. So you're making a pair of things. We're pairing title and descending together, versus if the colon's on the left, like this, it's not really paired with anything. It's just a single value of title, or it's a single symbol of title. Does that help, Jen?
Yes. So if you're assigning like a specific way that you would like it to be returned, that's when you're like Yes, thank you. It makes sense.
Okay. Other questions? Sid.
Would you say for active record and the select method, you primarily use the symbol, whereas like for .where, .order, you can use the column names in quotes?
You can use, we could interchange anywhere where we're using a symbol, you could almost always interchange with the string. Whoops. Yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I prefer to use symbols. There is like a small performance boost in terms of Ruby, but it's very minimal. Regina?
So when you're in active record and you use the methods like order or where, you're using an array. Am I seeing something wrong? Is it transforming the array? So if you first put in order, it'll stay in that order if you like were to put in another method underneath it, right? Or does it go back to its original format, I suppose?
So I would say that these methods are returning an array. It's not that they are, they are returning array. So if I do something like song.order title, and then I say .limit to, I don't want you to look at this as two separate method calls. So for instance, we're ordering and then we're limiting. I want you to look at, when we're writing these active record methods, I want you to look at this as one big package. This is one package of active record, and it all gets executed at once. After that gets executed, then it returns an array. So once I hit enter, now is when we get back our array of songs. Before that, we did not have an array of songs. All we had was a song model. And we were telling the song model, go out to the database and get me these songs. And it represented that as an array.
Okay. I guess like what you had done is you took the songs and you ordered them alphabetically. And then after that, you did like you submitted that, and then you did limit 1, and then it came back with 1, and then you did limit 2, and it came back with 2, but it was still in alphabetical order, right? It didn't go to its original format.
So like if I do this versus this.
So it's like you've transformed your array. Am I using the right vocabulary?
Oh, I would say I created a brand new array. So I would look at this as one method call returned me this array, second method call returned me this array. So think of them as like they're two different arrays. It's not that I took this one and then made it, then limited it again. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it did not transform it. Okay.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And all the methods that we've talked about today, order, where, limit, distinct, all of those, none of those actually change any of the data in the database. They simply grab the data from the database so that we can visualize it or maybe like analyze it, but we didn't actually save any data. We didn't transform any data in the database. Mark?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a, like in the Rails, I guess, C console, is there a way to create it like as a table as it does in the DB console?
Not that I know of. And really the reason is because of what Active Record is. Active Record is an ORM, an object relational mapper. So its job is to take this raw data from the table and transform it into Ruby objects or map them into Ruby objects. So Active Record its whole job is to create these Ruby objects for us. I don't think that it's very easy to go the other way and then see those objects as tables of data.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, y'all. So I think that's about all we have time for today. Thank you all very much. Up next, you should have a cohort retro. Yeah, we'll move into that next. We are going to have the small group review session for intro to databases and ORMs. So especially if today you're feeling like, kind of wrapping your head around like what exactly is happening in the database versus like in the terminal, that connection is kind of fuzzy. The review session would probably be valuable for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post a Zoom link for you all to join. And if you want to join, you can. If not, that's totally fine as well. That will be from 12:10 to 12:40. So it'll be 30 minutes over lunch. All right. Thank you all very much. We'll see you in the afternoon.